What happens when you walk into your own business and no one sees you as the man who owns it? Xavier Stokes stood across the street from Store 11, a tire shop tucked between a gas station and a faded diner. The place looked fine from the outside, clean, busy, decent signage, but something hadn't felt right for a while. Customer satisfaction scores had dropped at 3 of his 18 tire shops, but Store 11 had the steepest dip. He'd inherited the company 5 years ago from his late father, and while most stores were thriving, this one had been on his mind. He wasn't going off second-hand reports anymore. Xavier pulled the brim of his cap lower and adjusted the fake glasses over his nose. The beard was real, grown out over the past month specifically for this. He wore a faded hoodie, jeans, and steel toe boots. He looked like any guy trying to make a paycheck. The company ran under a corporate brand name, and with over 200 employees across the chain, most of the staff had never seen Xavier in person. He'd kept it that way on purpose. Until now. He stepped through the bay doors just as a loud impact wrench zipped a lug nut off a tire. "Hey," a voice barked. "You the new guy?" A man in his late 40s with a beer belly and a shaved head walked over, wiping his hands on a rag. His name tag read Rick Supervisor. "Yeah," Xavier said, keeping his voice low. "I'm supposed to start today, temp program." Rick grunted. "Figures. They're always sending someone. You got experience?" "Some," Xavier lied. "Don't slow us down. I'll have Manny show you the ropes." Rick waved at a younger guy across the floor, maybe early 20s, skinny, covered in tattoos and sweat. He looked up, nodded, and walked over. "I'm Manny," he said, extending a hand. "You can ride with me today. Rick's got a short fuse, but just stay quiet and do what I do." Xavier followed him, and they got to work changing tires, checking pressure, balancing wheels. It wasn't long before he realized Manny knew his stuff fast, careful, respectful to customers. But what stood out more was how tense he looked every time Rick came around. Around noon, a middle-aged woman pulled into the lot in a red SUV. She looked nervous. "Hi," she said. "I think I have a slow leak in one of my tires. Could someone take a look?" Manny nodded. "Sure, ma'am, just give me a few minutes." As they pulled the SUV into the bay, Rick slid in behind them. "Let me see the work order," Rick said, snatching the clipboard from Manny's hands. His eyes scanned it. "Slow leak, huh?" He turned to Xavier. "You're new, watch this." Rick knelt, tapped the inside of the tread with a wrench, then stood back up. "Tell her she needs a full replacement. Actually, tell her all 4 are worn, push the full set." Manny stiffened. "But there's barely any wear, Rick. I just checked. I didn't ask for your opinion," Rick snapped. "You want to keep working here?" Manny looked at the tire, then at Xavier, his jaw clenched. "Yes, sir." Rick turned to Xavier. "You too. You say what I tell you to say." "Got it." Xavier felt something twist in his gut. He gave a slow nod, pretending not to know better. The woman walked back over a minute later. "Well," she asked. Manny hesitated, then looked her in the eye. "There's a slow leak, but the tires are fine otherwise. We can patch it. Shouldn't cost more than $20. Rick's face turned red. The woman smiled, relieved. "Thank you. I was worried I'd need new ones." She walked off to the waiting area. Rick grabbed Manny by the arm and pulled him aside, not noticing Xavier following close behind. "You question me in front of a customer again and you're gone," Rick hissed. "I don't care how good you are. You cost us money. You're a problem." Manny stayed silent, eyes lowered. Xavier walked back to the workbench, fists tight. This wasn't just bad service, this was fraud. And Rick was forcing it. Later that afternoon, Xavier helped Manny rotate a set of tires on a pickup. "You always get heat like that?" Xavier asked. Manny shrugged. "Only when I tell the truth." Rick thinks everyone who walks in is a walking wallet. "Why do you stay?" Manny glanced at the customer waiting by the counter. "I've got a daughter, I need the hours." Xavier swallowed hard. He didn't say anything else. He spent the rest of the day watching. Another worker, Jace, barely lifted a finger, spent more time on his phone than touching a tire. Rick didn't say a word to him. Meanwhile, Manny worked through his lunch. That night, Xavier sat in his truck, looking out at the store as the bay doors closed. This wasn't just a bad manager. It was a culture problem. He needed to see more. He'd be back tomorrow. Xavier returned before sunrise the next day, parking around the block again to not raise suspicion. He hadn't slept much. His mind kept circling around what he'd seen. There was no mistaking it now. Store 11 had slid off the rails in ways the reports couldn't quantify. Inside, the shop lights buzzed to life one by one. Rick arrived 10 minutes late, coffee in one hand, Bluetooth in his ear. He didn't acknowledge Xavier or Manny, who were already setting up the floor for the morning rush. No greeting, no check-in. Just walked straight to the office and shut the door. Manny didn't say much at first. He looked more tired than yesterday, eyes slightly sunken, hands moving slower. "You all right?" Xavier asked, wiping his hands with a rag. Didn't get to sleep until after 2. "My girl's got some kind of flu. Threw up twice, then cried for hours." Xavier nodded, grabbed a torque wrench and joined him at the first lift. Neither said much for a while. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was the kind that settles between people who understand something heavy without needing to explain it. By 8:30, the first appointment rolled in. A man in a Navy work van with a busted front left tire. Routine. Manny handled it while Xavier rebalanced a rear wheel on a different vehicle. He overheard Rick on the phone behind the glass office wall, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. "I don't care what the estimate says, push the full alignment package. If they say no, tell him it's a safety issue. Make it stick." Another employee, a guy named Leo, leaned against a tool chest with earbuds in, scrolling through his phone. His uniform shirt was unbuttoned halfway, revealing a sleeveless undershirt and a chain. He hadn't touched a single car yet. "You gonna help with this lift?" Xavier asked, gesturing to the truck waiting in Bay 3. Leo didn't look up. "Ain't my ticket, ask Manny." "You're not assigned to any lifts. I do whatever Rick tells me to do. If he says chill, I chill." Xavier stepped away, jaw tight. That was the third vehicle Manny had taken solo since the shop opened. No one else was picking up the slack. Rick eventually emerged from the office around 9:30 and barked out, "Manny, you're doing a radiator flush too." "Customers waiting." "I've got 2 tires still up," Manny said, not looking up. "Figure it out." Rick turned to Xavier. You're with him, don't slow him down." They hustled. The radiator on the old Ford took longer than expected. The bolts were corroded, the hoses dry rotted. Manny's hands were bleeding by the time they got it done. Not once did Rick check in. At lunch, Manny sat on the curb outside, unwrapping a sandwich with one hand while texting with the other. "Do they ever bring in more techs when it gets like this?" Xavier asked, sitting next to him. "Used to. Before Rick took over, now it's just work faster." The door behind them creaked open. Rick stepped out, not looking at either of them. Breaks over. Xavier checked his watch. 13 minutes. Back inside, a woman with a cane walked in, accompanied by her teenage son. The boy looked nervous, glancing around the room like he wasn't sure they were in the right place. Rick went to the counter. "What do you need?" the woman spoke softly. "I think there's something wrong with the steering. It pulls hard to the right. I don't know if it's an alignment or..." "I'm not sure." Rick didn't look up from the screen. "You got an appointment?" "No, but I was hoping." "Then you're gonna wait. We're slammed." The woman looked at the boy, then back at Rick. "How long, roughly?" "Could be 2 hours, could be 5. "Depends how long these guys take," he said, jerking a thumb toward the shop floor. Manny stepped forward. "I can squeeze it in between jobs. It's probably just a toe angle issue." Rick shot him a look. "You got enough on your plate." She came in with a cane. Rick turned back to the woman. "Fine, leave the keys, but if we find anything, you better be ready to pay for it. No freebies." The boy helped his mom to a chair. She looked down, embarrassed. Xavier walked over to Manny. "You sure you can squeeze this in? I'll find the time." "She reminds me of my mom." They pulled the car around. Xavier handled the inspection while Manny finished a set of caliper replacements. The alignment was off, but not severely. They corrected the toe settings, tightened the suspension bolts, and took it for a quick test drive. While Manny was gone, Rick cornered Xavier near the tire rack. "You hang around him too much. He's got a hero complex. Seems like he's the only one doing any real work. Rick stepped closer, his voice low. You don't know how things run around here. I don't need Boy Scouts, I need numbers. You hear me? Xavier stared back but didn't answer. Rick walked away muttering, corporate idiots keep sending me charity cases. The woman and her son left quietly after Manny explained the repairs and refused any payment beyond the basic alignment fee. The boy gave Manny a quiet thank you as he opened the car door for his mom. By late afternoon, another temp showed up, a guy named Trey. Younger, maybe 19, fresh uniform shirt still stiff at the seams. First day? Xavier asked. Yeah. They said to ask for Rick. Rick barely looked up when Trey approached. Go grab a broom and sweep the back. Trey hesitated. I thought I'd be shadowing someone. Rick cocked his head. You thought wrong. Trey turned, clearly unsure what to do. Xavier walked over. You can stick with me, he said. We're finishing up a brake job on Bay 5. Trey jumped in, eager to help. He asked questions, took direction well, and by the end of the job had grease on his face and a grin on his lips. The kid wanted to learn. Rick came by, saw Trey holding a caliper and snapped. Did I say you could touch tools? He was helping me, Xavier said. Rick glared at Trey. You think you know how to work on brakes? You want to pay for a lawsuit if this goes sideways? Trey froze. He told me. Rick pointed at the back wall. Out, you're done for the day. Xavier stepped between them. He didn't do anything wrong. You don't talk back to me, Rick barked. You're not even full-time. Trey left, shoulders low, wiping his hands on his shirt. That was it. Xavier turned, walked into the office and pulled out his phone. He called the regional HR director directly. I need you at store 11. Immediately, don't ask questions, just get here. He hung up, walked back onto the floor and waited. 30 minutes later, a black sedan pulled into the lot. A woman in a blazer stepped out and made a beeline for the office. Rick was inside, feet on the desk, scrolling through his phone. He looked up as she entered, confused. Xavier followed her, peeled off the hat and glasses and shut the door behind them. Rick's face went slack. You're Xavier Stokes, owner. Rick stood, stammering. Wasn't told you were coming. You weren't supposed to be. Sit down. Sit down. Rick dropped into the chair, swallowing hard. The HR director, Vanessa, opened a folder and started taking notes. Xavier folded his arms. You've been falsifying repair recommendations, neglecting staff support, and retaliating against anyone who speaks up. You've also allowed gross underperformance from certain employees while overworking others. Rick opened his mouth, but Xavier cut him off. You are officially terminated, effective immediately. Vanessa slid a document across the desk. Sign here, you'll be escorted out. Rick stared at the paper, then at Xavier. You're making a mistake. No, I'm correcting one. He walked Rick out himself. The entire floor fell silent as the office door opened. Rick didn't say a word as he was led past the bays. Manny looked up from an oil change, Trey from the back corner where he'd been waiting. Rick stepped into his car and drove off without a glance. Xavier turned to the crew. I'm Xavier Stokes. I've been undercover here for 2 days. You've all shown me what this place really looks like from the ground. He looked at Manny. Some of you are the reason this shop hasn't collapsed. That's going to change starting now. The next morning, the shop floor was quiet, almost cautious. Word had spread fast. Rick was gone. No one knew exactly why, but the mood had shifted, less tension, more uncertainty. Manny arrived early again, his hoodie damp from the drizzle outside. He didn't speak much, just clocked in and started prepping Bay 2. Xavier stood near the office entrance, now in clean workwear and without his disguise. He didn't wear a name tag, he didn't need one anymore. Vanessa had stayed late the night before, reviewing staffing levels and compliance files. What she found made his stomach turn. Backlogged safety trainings, ignored complaints, and falsified performance reports. The shop wasn't broken because of one man. It had been neglected from the inside out. Jace was late. Again. When he finally walked in, he had earbuds in and a breakfast burrito in hand. He didn't acknowledge anyone, just dumped his bag behind the balancing station and leaned against the wall. Xavier walked over. You're late. Jace shrugged. Traffic. It's your third time this month. Yeah, well. I'm here now. Xavier glanced toward the bays where 2 vehicles were already on lifts with no assigned techs. You've got work waiting in Bay 3. Jace didn't move. I'm not clocked in yet. You're expected to be clocked in 10 minutes before your shift starts. That's in the employee handbook. Rick never cared, I do. Jace rolled his eyes and turned toward the time clock. Whatever, man, Xavier followed him. You've had multiple documented warnings, missed deadlines, incomplete inspections. This isn't a reset button. You're expected to contribute like everyone else. Jace tapped the screen and muttered, You think I'm scared of a new boss? Xavier didn't flinch. You should be concerned about your job. You're dismissed, effective immediately. Jace froze. Wait, what? You're not a fit for this team. Pack your things. Jace laughed dryly. You serious? Xavier didn't respond. He just opened the office door and held it. A few moments later, the door closed behind Jace for the final time. The room stayed quiet for a beat. Then Trey, who had returned despite what happened, looked up from organizing tools. You really fired him, Xavier nodded. We're not running a daycare. Trey blinked, then returned to his task with more focus than before. By mid-morning, the remaining crew was juggling more than they could handle. 2 walk-ins had shown up, and a delivery truck was parked in the back, waiting for someone to unload the new inventory. Xavier grabbed gloves and headed straight for the loading dock with Trey. You ever done inventory intake? Xavier asked, hoisting the first crate onto the dolly. No, but I can figure it out. Every box is scanned. Check tire sizes against the manifest. Make sure nothing's missing. Got it. As they worked, Xavier kept an eye on the clock. Manny hadn't taken a break yet. His hands were black with grime, his back hunched as he worked on a lifted Dodge with a rusted axle. Xavier walked over. You've been on your feet for hours. Go grab some air. I can't. There's still that Audi waiting on a coil replacement. I'll handle the Audi. Manny paused for the first time that day. You sure? Go, 10 minutes, sit outside. I'll call you if I need a second lift on it. Manny nodded, wiped his hands on a towel, and stepped out the back doorway. Inside, Trey had finished checking off the last of the crates and was now stacking tires onto the overhead shelves. The kid moved fast. Too fast. Careful, Xavier said. Don't overextend. Those shelves aren't forgiving. Trey paused, adjusted his grip, and slid the last tire into place. I'm good. Did warehouse stuff before this. Only job I could get after high school. You looking to stay in automotive? I like working with my hands. Just never had anyone teach me much. Stick around. That'll change. Xavier handed him a roll of plastic wrap for the smaller parts bin. As Trey got to work, the shop phone rang. Vanessa picked it up inside the office, then opened the door a moment later. That was corporate legal, she said. There's been a formal complaint filed by a former customer. She claims she was pressured into purchasing unnecessary services. Xavier felt his jaw tighten. Which location? Here. Time frame, 3 weeks ago. She had a receipt showing 4 tire replacements and an alignment on a vehicle with less than 20,000 miles. He glanced toward the files stacked on the desk. Pull the invoice. I want to know who signed off on it. Vanessa flipped through the drawer and pulled the paperwork. Rick. All of it. He did the inspection, approved the service, even ran the card. Xavier took the folder and scanned it. No notes, no photos, no documentation of where. We'll refund her, full amount, and document it as a breach of conduct. Vanessa nodded. Already done. She was shocked. Xavier handed the file back. Tell her we're under new management and that we're grateful she came forward. Later that afternoon, a man with a clipboard and a lanyard stepped into the bay. Environmental compliance check, he said. Random audit. Tires, fluids, disposal logs. Xavier met him at the oil station. You're welcome to inspect everything. Let me know if anything's off. The inspector walked the lot with Xavier, checking filters, disposal drums, chemical labels. Everything looked good until they reached the back storage shed. He pointed to a stack of used tires piled against the wall. Those can't be stored like that. They're exposed to weather, not properly tagged. Xavier exhaled slowly. How long's that been a violation, judging by the dry rot? Months. I'll have them sorted today. I'll be back next week. I expect compliance. You'll have it. By closing time, the team was down 2 employees, working with 1 new trainee and facing a list of urgent corrections. No one left early, not even Xavier. He cleaned the drains himself, then helped Trey empty the trash bins. Manny walked in from the garage, wiping sweat from his brow. Everything's off the lifts, we're good, Xavier nodded. Thanks, you heading home? Yeah, my kid's fever finally broke. She asked if I could read tonight. Get out of here, you've earned it. Manny paused. You staying late? I've got a few reports to finish. Inventory, compliance fixes, HR submissions. You sure you're not just trying to do everything at once? I'm sure I can't expect more from you than I'm willing to give myself. Manny looked at him for a moment. Wasn't expecting someone like you to be down here with us. That's the problem, Xavier said. I should have been here sooner. Manny left and Xavier returned to the office. Vanessa was still at the desk, highlighting the most urgent fixes. If we don't get a new supervisor in by next week, you'll burn out your crew, she said. They're stable but barely. I know. I've got someone in mind, but it's not an outside hire. Vanessa looked up. Internal, Xavier nodded. I want Manny to take the role. She raised an eyebrow. He's young, no management experience. He's got something better, trust. Every guy in that bay looks to him when things go sideways. He's already leading, they just haven't called it that yet. Vanessa closed the folder. Then you'll need to train him, real support. Not a promotion and a prayer. He'll get it. The lights in the shop flickered slightly as the timer rolled over into evening mode. Outside, the rain had stopped. The pavement still glistened, reflecting the faded shop sign above the bay doors. Xavier stood up and turned off the office lights. Tomorrow would be harder, but it would be honest, and that was a start. By Monday morning, the wind had picked up, sharp and dry, scattering leaves across the lot outside Store 11. Inside, the air was different too, not lighter, not yet, but steadier. Focused. The chaos of the previous week hadn't disappeared, but it was finally being named. That made it manageable. Xavier arrived early again, this time in a navy utility jacket with the company's logo, not corporate issue, but the version worn by floor staff. He brought 2 things with him, a clipboard and a quiet decision he'd made over the weekend. He stepped through the garage entrance and found Trey already inside, setting out socket sets along the workbench. The kid was still learning to organize his station. Some of the wrenches were upside down. Xavier walked over and flipped one around. Start with the 1/2 inch on the left, he said. Everything else lines up faster that way, Trey nodded. You always come in this early, I do now. He handed Trey the clipboard. You're shadowing Manny today, full shift, no sweeping, no parts runs. Just watch and assist, Trey looked up. You sure I'm ready for that? You won't be if you never start. Across the shop, Manny came through the side door, rubbing the back of his neck. He looked like he hadn't fully adjusted to the shift, yet more eyes on him, more decision-making, more people depending on what he said next. But he didn't shy from it. Xavier waved him over. I want you to take point on intake today. Every customer who walks in, you're the first face they see. Walk them through the issue, assign the job, and double-check the work before it goes out. Manny raised an eyebrow. You're serious? You're the acting floor lead, you knew that. I thought that meant helping out, not running it. It means both. And it starts now. The first test came before opening hours. A fleet client arrived unannounced with 3 work vans, all due for routine maintenance before a long-distance job. The driver, a woman in her 30s, looked tense, tight timeline, no appointment, and a trip looming the next day. Manny stepped in immediately. We can't promise all 3 by close, but if we stagger them, I can get the first 2 out today, third one early tomorrow. She hesitated. I've got a team headed to Utah at 6 tomorrow morning. Those vans need to be safe. Xavier watched silently as Manny pulled out a shop tablet, checked the live schedule, and shifted an oil change and a brake inspection to the afternoon. He called over Leo, one of the older, quieter techs, and assigned him the first van. Then he grabbed Trey. "Help me drain this coolant system, you'll learn fast." Xavier stepped back. The kid followed without question. By 11, 2 repair bays were running non-stop. Fluids were processed correctly. Parts were logged with photos. No one was rushing blindly. No one was cutting corners. Xavier stood near the waiting area, reviewing vendor invoices from the last quarter, when Vanessa walked in holding a small folder. "Preliminary review from HR," she said. "Exit interviews, customer complaints, and one file you need to see." He took the folder and opened it. Inside was a written statement from a former employee who'd quit 3 months earlier. The handwriting was tight and slanted. "I left because I was told to push brake replacements that weren't needed. When I refused, Rick started cutting my hours. After 2 weeks of under 30 hours, I couldn't cover rent. I had to walk away." Xavier closed the folder. "Why didn't this come up in the review process?" "It was submitted to the district rep. He never forwarded it. We found it during the audit." "Who was the district rep?" Vanessa paused. "Brent Callahan." Xavier nodded slowly. "He was promoted last year." Vanessa didn't answer. He looked over at the bays. "I'll escalate it to corporate oversight. If Brent buried complaints, he's out. Already notified ethics. They're reviewing his files across all zones." Xavier handed the folder back. "Keep going." Just after noon, a man in khakis and a polo shirt walked in, dragging a wheeled suitcase behind him. He looked around like he was inspecting a rental car. When he reached the counter, he leaned over slightly. "I need a rotation and balance, and I'm on a tight schedule." Manny walked in from the garage, wiping his palms. "I can take a look right now," he said. "If it's just rotation and balance, we should have you out in about 45 minutes. The man narrowed his eyes. "You sure that's enough time? I've had places try to upcharge me. I don't want any surprises." Manny kept his tone even. "We'll only recommend what's needed. If anything else comes up, I'll show you before we do anything." The man nodded, still stiff but less guarded. Manny turned to Trey. "Bring up the lift on Bay 4. I'll check the tread and weights." It was a small moment, but it was the kind of trust that Rick had burned through. Now it was being rebuilt slowly, one honest job at a time. In the backlot, Xavier checked the tire storage area. The old, weathered pile was gone. The new racks had labels, covers, and a disposal log attached to the wall. He ran a hand over the shelf edge. Dry, clean. Later that afternoon, a woman in a gray windbreaker arrived with a flat tire and a toddler in the back seat. She looked worn out, not angry, just running on fumes. Xavier approached cautiously. "Someone helping you already?" She shook her head. "I think I hit a nail. I don't know how to get the spare down." Manny was finishing paperwork nearby. Xavier waved him over. "Take this one. I'll handle the invoice stack." Manny nodded and crouched by the rear of the car. 10 minutes later, the flat was patched and reinstalled. The woman tried to pay. Manny shook his head. "Patches on the house. You've got more important things to spend on." She blinked and opened her mouth but didn't say anything. Just nodded and left. When the doors finally closed at 6, Xavier gathered the crew in the center of the shop. They stood in a loose circle, some sipping water, others just leaning back on toolboxes. "Tough week," he said. "But you held it together, and I'm not going to forget it." Manny leaned on the lift rail. "Feels like we're finally breathing again. You're not wrong, but we're not done. We've got 2 interviews this week, potential hires to build the team back up. You'll be part of the review panel." Manny looked up. "Me? You're leading the floor. You help decide who works beside you." Trey turned to Xavier. "You think I'll get to that level someday?" "I think if you keep showing up like you did today, it's a matter of time." Xavier stepped back, looked around the room. "We're not going backward. We're not going to be the shop people warn their friends about. We're going to be the one they recommend." No one clapped. No one cheered. But they didn't need to. They just nodded quietly, seriously, and went back to closing out the day. Outside, the sun dipped behind the trees, casting the lot in long shadows. The sign above the garage still flickered at the corner, one bulb dimmer than the rest. Xavier looked up at it for a moment. He'd have it replaced next week, one bulb at a time.